The silence of the graveyard of giants was a heavy, suffocating thing. A silence measured not in the absence of sound, but in the weight of dead stars and shattered history. Alara Vance felt it pressing on the hull of the stray dog, a constant, low hum that vibrated up through the deck plates and into the soles of her worn mag boots. This was her kingdom, a sprawling cosmic tomb, where the metal ghosts of the Gorgon War lay in silent repose. She was a salvager, a carrion bird picking at the bones of warships that had once been humanity's pride. For 10 years, the graveyard had been her home, her hunting ground, and the only place where the ghosts of her own past felt distant enough to bear. Her ship's AI, Kane, broke the reverie with his usual lack of sentiment. His voice, a calm, synthesized baritone, echoed softly in the cramped cockpit. Proximity alert. Ella, we are 1,000 meters from the primary objective. External radiation is within expected parameters for a dead Cerberus-class dreadnought, though I am flagging an anomalous energy signature emanating from the reactor housing. Very low frequency. Almost looks like biological feedback. Ella leaned forward, her knuckles brushing against the cold console. On the main view screen, the wreck of the Daedalus loomed, a jagged silhouette against the faint, milky glow of a distant nebula. It was the prize of all prizes, a ship that had vanished without a trace in the war's final days, taking with it 5,000 souls and Admiral Corbin himself. The official report cited a new class of Gorgon sonic weapon, a story no one in the salvage community truly believed. The Daedalus wasn't just a wreck, it was a legend, a ghost story whispered over cheap synthale in dimly lit station bars. Biological feedback from a cold fission core that's been dormant for 50 years, Ela murmured, her eyes tracing the ship's mangled superstructure. Run the scan again. Kane, probably just stellar interference. The AI paused for precisely 1.3 seconds. I do not make errors of that nature, Ella. The signature is faint, but it is present. It pulses in a non-random, rhythmic pattern. I am cross-referencing all known xenobiological data. No matches. A familiar thrill, cold and sharp, ran down Ela's spine. This was why she flew the graveyard. Not just for the scrap metal or the occasional intact weapon system, for the mysteries, the secrets the dead took with them. All right, keep an eye on it. Take us in slow. I want to board through the forward hangar bay. Less chance of running into unexploded ordnance. The Stray Dog, a patchwork vessel that was more rust and hope than starship, maneuvered with practiced ease, its magnetic grapples latching onto the scarred hull of the dreadnought with a heavy thud that resonated through both ships. Inside the Daedalus, the air was stale, thick with the metallic tang of old blood and ozone. Ella's helmet lamp cut a sharp cone of light through the oppressive darkness of the hangar bay, illuminating floating debris and the frozen, silent forms of crew members still strapped into their seats, their faces masks of surprise and terror. The Gorgons had been thorough, but as she moved deeper into the ship, an unsettling wrongness began to creep in. There were no signs of the sonic fracturing that characterized Gorgon attacks. The bulkheads weren't shattered, they were warped. Metal flowed in smooth, unnatural curves, as if the ship had been briefly turned to liquid and then flash frozen. It was a detail the long-range scans had never picked up. Kane, you seeing this? She whispered into her comms, her voice tight. The structural damage is inconsistent with Gorgon weaponry. Affirmative, Kane's voice replied in her ear. The molecular integrity of the alloy has been compromised on a fundamental level. It resembles heat distortion, yet there is no corresponding carbon scoring or evidence of a thermal event. I am cataloging the anomalies. Ela moved past a mess hall, the tables still set, the food trays welded to the surfaces by whatever force had ripped through the vessel. She was heading for the engineering deck, drawn by the strange energy signature Kane had detected. The rhythmic pulse grew stronger as she descended, a subliminal thrum she could feel in her bones. It wasn't just energy, it felt like a presence. The engineering bay was an eerie cathedral of ruin. Massive conduits, thick as ancient trees, snaked across the ceiling, dripping a viscous, dark fluid that sizzled where it touched the deck. And there, at the heart of the chamber, was the reactor core. The protective housing had been peeled open like a flower, its metallic petals twisted outward. But it wasn't the destroyed core that held her transfixed. It was what was embedded inside it. A perfect and black obelisk, 10 feet tall, stood untouched amidst the chaos. Its surface was so utterly devoid of reflection that it seemed to drink the light from her helmet lamp, creating a hole in reality. It had no seams as sheet, no markings, no sign of manufacture. It was simply there. As she drew closer, the thrumming intensified, resonating directly in her mind. "Kane, what is that?" she breathed, her hand hovering over the sidearm holstered at her hip. "Analysis is inconclusive," the AI stated, his calm tone fraying with something that sounded almost like digital confusion. "It is composed of no known element. It is not emitting the anomalous energy. It is absorbing it from the surrounding space-time. The object is a perfect energy sink. And, Ella, it is old. My temporal sensors are fluctuating wildly, but the estimates are in the billions of years." Before Ela could process the impossibility of that statement, a blaring alarm screamed in her helmet. "Warning!" Kane's voice was suddenly sharp, stripped of its usual calm. "Multiple vessels just translated from slipspace. Axiom Corporation security fleet. They are hailing us. Audio patch coming through." A harsh, arrogant voice filled her ears. "Stray dog, this is the Axiom Enforcer Vigilance. You are trespassing in a restricted corporate salvage zone. Power down your vessel and prepare to be boarded. Failure to comply will be met with lethal force." Ella swore, scrambling back from the obelisk. Axiom, the most ruthless conglomerate in the outer sectors, known for making competitors disappear. They must have been tracking the Daedalus for years, waiting for some schmuck like her to do the dangerous work of cracking it open. "They're powering weapons," Kane reported grimly. 3 Condor-class frigates. Our shields won't withstand a single volley." "Get the engines hot," Ella yelled, sprinting back the way she came. "Prepare for emergency disengagement on my mark." And she vaulted over debris, the distorted hallways twisting around her. The thrumming from the obelisk was louder now, a deafening beat that seemed to match her own frantic pulse. As she raced through the hangar and launched herself back toward the stray dog's airlock, the entire dreadnought shuddered violently. On the cockpit view screen, space itself seemed to ripple around the Daedalus. "What was that?" she demanded, sealing the inner door. "The obelisk," Kane said, his voice strained. "Its energy absorption is increasing exponentially. It is destabilizing the local reality." The Axiom frigates began to close in, their forms sleek and predatory against the starfield. They were toying with her, a pack of wolves surrounding a wounded doe. "This is your final warning. Stray dog," the voice of the Axiom commander crackled. But before he could finish his threat, something new appeared. It didn't emerge from slipspace with a flash of light. It simply arrived. One moment, there was empty space beside the Daedalus. The next, there was a ship, if it could be called a ship. It was a shard of absolute blackness, a jagged, crystalline form that seemed to tear at the light around it, its edges bleeding a coronial mist of darkness. It had no lights, no viewports, no visible engines. It moved with a silent, impossible grace. "Unidentified vessel," Kane stated, his processors clearly struggling. "No transponder, no energy signature that conforms to known propulsion physics. It appears to be coasting on a gravitational distortion." The Axiom commander was less analytical. "Unidentified vessel. You are interfering with an Axiom security operation. Identify yourself or you will be fired upon." The dark ship did not respond. Instead, the lead Axiom frigate, the Vigilance, suddenly buckled. There was no weapon fire, no beam of energy, no torpedo. The frigate's hull simply began to fold in on itself, as if crushed by an unseen god. Metal screamed in the vacuum, twisting into grotesque, impossible angles. Its reactor went critical, but it didn't explode. The blast was snuffed out before it could even form, imploding into a single, silent point of light that winked out of existence. The crews of the other two frigates panicked, their weapons firing wildly at the obsidian vessel. The energy bolts splashed harmlessly against its dark hull, absorbed without a trace. Then, it was their turn. One ship was pulled apart like taffy, its structure elongating and thinning until it snapped into a dozen pieces that then sublimated into dust. The other simply was vanished. One frame it was there, the next it was gone, leaving behind nothing but a lingering, shimmering distortion in space. A strange scent, like ozone and burnt cinnamon, flooded the stray dog's air recyclers, a phantom smell that had no physical source. The silence that followed was more profound than any before. The dark ship drifted for a moment, its silent, eyeless gaze seemingly fixed on the stray dog. Ella felt pinned, a butterfly under glass. Then, a beam of coherent light, not a weapon but a tight stream of data, shot from the vessel and washed over her ship. "Data intrusion," Kane announced. "It's bypassing my firewalls. It's not hostile. It appears to be a gift." The beam ceased. The dark ship rotated slowly, impossibly, and then slid back into the nothing from which it came, disappearing as silently as it had arrived. Ella was left alone, her breath fogging the inside of her helmet, her heart hammering against her ribs. She was floating in a graveyard and surrounded by the ghosts of a forgotten war and the fresh, impossible ghosts of Axiom security. "Kane," she finally managed to say, her voice a hoarse whisper. "What did it give us?" "A data packet," the AI replied. "Deeply fragmented, protected by an encryption I cannot begin to comprehend. It seems designed to decay, like a radioactive isotope. I believe I can only access it once before it erases itself completely. There are two primary files I can access." "Show me," Ella commanded. A star chart materialized on the screen. It was a map of the known galaxy, but one sector was highlighted a notorious, unexplored region, shrouded in dark matter nebulae known to spacers as the Persephone Veil, a place ships went into and never came out of. The second file was audio. Kane played it. Static hissed for a moment, then a voice cut through the noise, distorted and strained with panic. It was a collage of different voices from what sounded like a chaotic comms channel. "Containment breach in Lab 3. God, it's in the vents. It's wearing Dr. Miles's face." The chaotic voices faded, replaced by one clear, calm voice that sent a jolt of ice through Ella's veins. It was a voice she hadn't heard in 10 years, A voice that had taught her the constellations and the complexities of xenophysics. A voice she'd last heard in a tearful goodbye on a station platform before he'd taken a research post that promised to change the world. "It's not a door. Eris," another voice in the recording said, strained and unfamiliar. "Look at the readings. It's a mirror." Then her mentor's voice, Dr. Eris Thorne, came through, laced with a terrifying, dawning horror. "No, not a mirror. It's an echo. It shows you what you will become." The recording ended. Kane's synthesized voice was soft. "The transmission signature originates from Tantalus Base. Ella, the Deep Space Research Station in the Persephone Vale. The one that was officially declared lost with all hands, including Dr. Thorne, after a catastrophic reactor failure a decade ago." Ella stared at the star chart, at the dark, forbidden nebula where her mentor had vanished. The ghost story of the Daedalus had led her to a real one. The dark ship hadn't just saved her, it had given her a destination, a purpose beyond scavenging. Axiom wanted what was in that wreck. An ancient, impossible intelligence had intervened, and her long-lost mentor was tangled in the heart of it all, and the choice was simple. She could run, sell the location of the Daedalus to the highest bidder, and disappear, or she could follow the ghost of Eris Thorne into the dark. "Kane," she said, her voice steady now, resolute. "Plot a course for the Persephone Vale." The AI paused. "The navigational hazards are extreme. The probability of survival is less than 17%. Just do it," Alara commanded, her eyes fixed on the swirling darkness on the screen. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't running from the ghosts of her past. She was chasing them. The journey to the Persephone Vale was a long, silent fall into the unknown. For 3 weeks, the stray dog slid through the star-strewn blackness, a tiny, significant spark fleeing the settled systems of humanity. Alara filled the time with routine, running diagnostics she knew by heart, recalibrating sensors that were already perfectly aligned, anything to keep her mind from replaying the impossible events in the graveyard. Yet, in the quiet moments between tasks, the ghosts always found her. Not the ghosts of the Daedalus, but the ghost of Eris Thorne. She remembered his cluttered office at the Triton Academy, the smell of old books and hot circuits, his face illuminated by the glow of a holographic star chart as he explained the elegant, terrifying beauty of a singularity. He was the one who had seen the spark in a rebellious orphan destined for a life in the asteroid mines and had instead shown her the universe. "Curiosity is the engine of discovery, Ella," he used to say, his eyes twinkling. "But empathy is its rudder. Never forget that." The memory was a dull ache in her chest, a wound that had never properly healed. The official story of Tantalus Base, a reactor leak, a tragic accident, had always felt hollow. A clean, corporate-approved explanation for a messy truth. Now she knew why. The data packet from the dark ship was a poison and a key. And she couldn't get the sound of Eris's final, horrified words out of her head. "It's an echo. It shows you what you will become." Kane, ever the pragmatist, was more concerned with their immediate future. "I have detected a quantum entanglement signature trailing our slipspace wake," he announced on the 4th day. His voice was as calm as ever, but Alara could detect the underlying urgency. "It is the telltale marker of an Axiom Corporation Q tracker. They are not in visual range, but they are hunting us. Ella, they are maintaining a distance of 2 light hours, likely waiting for us to exit slipspace." This changed the equation. It was no longer a journey of discovery. It was a race. "Can we shake them?" Alara asked, her knuckles white as she gripped the pilot's yoke. "The stray dog is not designed for stealth," Kane replied. "Our engine's energy bleed is inefficient. A more advanced vessel can track it across a sector. Our only advantage is our destination. Standard corporate protocols forbid pursuit into a navigational hazard as severe as the Persephone Veil." Alara allowed herself a grim smile. "So, we're betting my life on Axiom's adherence to their own safety regulations. Fantastic." When they finally arrived at the edge of the veil, it was clear why even Axiom feared it. It wasn't a nebula of gas and dust. It was a wound in the fabric of the universe, a region of space where the laws of physics seemed to have frayed. Starlight didn't just pass through it. It bent. It fractured. It smeared across the void in sickening, iridescent patterns. The stray dog dropped out of slip space with a lurch, and reality itself seemed to turn to static. The ship's sensors screamed, flooded with ghost signals and contradictory readings. "Navigational computer is struggling to find a stable reference point," Kane reported, his voice tinged with digital static. "Gravitational fields are in constant flux. I advise extreme caution." Alara's hands flew across the controls, manually compensating for the tidal forces that threatened to tear her little ship apart. The veil was a cosmic storm, and she was sailing into its heart. Hours turned into days as they pushed deeper, the ship groaning under the strain. The inertial dampeners, the only thing keeping the crew from being turned into paste, began to stutter, sending jarring shudders through the deck. Reality was a thin veneer here, and it was peeling. Outside, phantom shapes coalesced in the swirling darkness, fleeting images of impossible geometries, of ships that had never been built, of stellar phenomena that defied classification. It was a place of cosmic madness, and Tantalus Base was somewhere in the middle of it. It was Kane who found the anomaly. "I am detecting a concentration of refined alloys approximately 70,000 kilometers off the starboard bow," he announced, cutting through Ilara's tense concentration. "It is stationary. A ship. Its energy signature is dead, but its distress beacon is active, broadcasting on a tight, encrypted Axiom frequency." A trap. Ilara's first instinct was to ignore it, to keep pushing forward, but the Axiom tracker was still out there, lurking behind them. If they knew about this derelict, they might bypass it, giving her a chance to put more distance between them. Besides, a dead Axiom ship this deep in the veil was a mystery too tempting to ignore. "Take us in," she ordered. Quietly. The ship was a research vessel, a sleek, arrow-headed design called the Oracle. It was a ghost ship of a different sort than the warships in the graveyard, a monument to corporate hubris. It drifted silently, its hull pockmarked by micro-asteroids encoded in a strange, crystalline frost that seemed to pulse with a faint, internal light. There were no signs of external damage, no hull breaches or weapon scars. It looked as though the crew had simply turned off the lights and vanished. "I'm going over," Alara said, pulling on her EVA suit. "The ship's logs might tell us what we're flying into." "My analysis suggests this is an unnecessary risk," Kane countered. "The structural integrity of the vessel is unknown." "So is everything else out here?" she retorted, cycling the airlock. "Keep the engines warm and an eye out for our friends." The interior of the Oracle was even more disturbing than its silent exterior. It was pristine, almost sterile, but a profound sense of wrongness hung in the recycled air. Emergency lights cast long, distorted shadows down the empty corridors. The first thing she found was the graffiti, scrawled across the walls of the mess hall. in what looked like a nutrient paste, were frantic, repeating patterns and phrases. "It has my eyes," one message screamed. "The man in the glass is not me," said another. "Don't listen to the echo." It was a chronicle of a crew that had gone completely, utterly mad. She found the bridge and the ship's log, the captain's entries, recorded in a calm, professional voice, started out as standard procedure. They were here, like her, following a trail left by the Daedalus incident. They had tracked the dark ship's energy signature to the veil, believing it was the source of a new, powerful technology. But as they ventured deeper, the captain's tone began to change. His reports became disjointed, filled with long, unnerving silences. He spoke of nightmares shared by the entire crew, of seeing fleeting apparitions in their peripheral vision, of a growing, suffocating paranoia. The final log entry was recorded just hours before the ship went dark. The captain's voice was a ragged whisper, the sound of a man who had stared into the abyss and found it staring back. "We were wrong," he rasped, the sound of manic scratching audible in the background. "It's not a place. It's a lens. It doesn't block signals. It reflects them. But it reflects, well, its possibilities, other timelines, other choices. The echo. God. The echo isn't a sound. It's a person. It's you. The you that made a different choice. The you that failed. We've been seeing ourselves, the ghosts of the people we could have been, haunting the halls, and they are full of such regret." The scratching stopped. The captain took a shuddering breath. Thorne was right. The heretic of Tantalus. That's what the corporate briefs called him. He understood. He wasn't trying to open a door. He was trying to soundproof a room. And we've torn down the walls. The log ended abruptly. The heretic of Tantalus. Axiom knew about Eris. They weren't just after some alien technology. They were after his research. Alara felt a cold knot tighten in her stomach. She turned to leave, her mind reeling, and that's when she saw it. For a fraction of a second, her own reflection in the darkened, dead monitor of the captain's console flickered. The face that stared back was hers. But it was horrifyingly different. It was gaunt, hollow-eyed, aged by a decade of terror. The face was a mask of pure, soul-crushing despair. Her reflection's lips moved, forming a single, silent word she understood in her very soul: run. She recoiled, stumbling backward, her heart seizing in her chest. The image was gone as quickly as it had appeared, replaced by her own wide-eyed, terrified face. It was a trick of the light, a hallucination brought on by the stress and the madness of this place. It had to be. Her calm crackled to life, Kane's voice cutting through the suffocating silence of the oracle. "Illa," he said, and for the first time since she'd activated him, his synthesized voice was laced with something akin to alarm. "We have company. A vessel just appeared on local sensors, deep within the veil. And it is not Axiom." The frantic sprint back through the pristine, maddening corridors of the Oracle was a race against the ghost in the machine and the monster in the dark. Every darkened viewport seemed to hold the fleeting, despairing image of her other self. Every flicker of the emergency lights felt like a wink from a malevolent universe. Alara slammed her palm against the airlock control, the inner door hissing shut behind her, sealing out the sterile tomb and its chorus of regretful whispers. She launched herself across the short gangway and into the familiar, cramped cockpit of the stray dog. The scent of recycled air and hydraulic fluid a comforting anchor to her own reality, Report, she snapped, strapping herself into the pilot's chair. What is it? What's out there? On the main screen, Kane had isolated the new contact. It was unlike any ship she had ever seen. Where the dark vessel from the graveyard had been a shard of pure, geometric nothingness, this new arrival was a thing of grotesque, organic chaos. It was a gnarled, asymmetrical mass of what looked like blackened bone and pulsating, chitinous plates, all centered around a glowing, sickly green core that throbbed like a diseased heart. Tendrils, some as fine as wire and others as thick as mooring cables, writhed slowly in the void around it, tasting the distorted space of the veil. Its energy profile is a paradox, Kane stated, his voice tight with the strain of processing the impossible data. It has no discernible propulsion system, yet it moves. It radiates intense heat, yet my thermal sensors rid it at near absolute zero. It is, for lack of a better term, a scar, a wound in space that has festered and grown. The biomechanical horror began to turn, its eyeless form focusing on the tiny stray dog. One of the thick tendrils whipped forward, not with the speed of a projectile, but with the instantaneous, logic-defying snap of a collapsing thought. It wasn't aimed at the ship, it was aimed at the space just in front of it. Where the tendril passed, reality fractured. A web of shimmering, crystalline cracks spread through the vacuum, and for a terrifying second, Alara saw through the cracks into a different place, a starless void filled with silent, screaming faces. Evasive maneuvers, she yelled, wrenching the controls hard to port. The stray dog groaned in protest, its old frame complaining as it dodged the spreading fissure in space-time.
What the hell was that?
It appears to be a temporal weapon, Kane said, his analytical tone a stark contrast to the madness unfolding on screen. It doesn't damage matter. It severs causality. It attempts to isolate its target from the primary timeline, effectively making it one of the phantoms we have been observing. The you that made a different choice. The you that failed. The captain of the Oracle's words echoed in her mind. This thing, this Reaper, it wasn't a warship. It was a predator. It hunted and harvested the echoes of the veil. Another tendril lashed out, and another. Alara was thrown into a desperate, frantic ballet, piloting on pure instinct as her navigation console flickered and died, unable to chart a course through a reality that was actively being unwritten around her. The Reaper wasn't just chasing them, it was herding them, using its reality-cracking weapons to cut off their escape routes, forcing them deeper into the most chaotic currents of the veil.
It's trying to disable us,
she grunted, sweat beading on her forehead as she bypassed a fried guidance processor. It wants us alive, or whatever the alternative is. Its tactics are efficient, Kane noted grimly. It is creating a localized labyrinth of temporal paradoxes. There is no escape route. At our current trajectory, we will be cornered in approximately 9 minutes. Then find me a new trajectory. There are none, Kane stated simply. Every potential path is compromised. A cold dread, colder than the vacuum outside, began to settle in Alara's gut. This was it. This was how she ended, not in a blaze of glory or a quiet, peaceful death, but as a forgotten ghost in a cosmic madhouse, hunted by a thing that defied sanity. Her gaze fell upon the star chart, still faintly glowing on a secondary monitor, the map from the dark ship, the blinking coordinate of Tantalus Base. There, she said, her voice a low, determined whisper. That's our trajectory. I don't care what's in the way. Take us there. Straight line. The path is blocked by a high-density gravitic shear and what my sensors can only interpret as a solidified temporal anomaly. Kane protested. Flying through it would be tantamount to suicide. It's a better death than becoming my own ghost, Alara countered, her hand steadying on the controls. Plot the course. Give me everything the engines have. For a moment, Kane was silent. Then, course laid in, rerouting all non-essential power, including life support reserves, to the primary thrusters. The G-forces will be significant. The stray dog shuddered as its engines, pushed far beyond their safety limits, ignited with a furious, screaming roar. The ship leaped forward like a startled animal, a tiny spear of light and defiance aimed at the heart of the storm. The Reaper, as if sensing their desperate gambit, surged after them, its tendrils whipping the void into a frenzy of shattered realities. The gravitic shear hit them first. It felt like the hand of a god crushing the ship's hull. Alarms blared, red lights flashing across the cockpit. Alara felt her vision tunnel, the crushing weight pressing her into her seat, every bone in her body screaming. The ship's frame groaned, metal shrieking as it was warped by the immense forces. Then they were through, bursting into the solidified temporal anomaly. Outside the viewport, the universe dissolved, and time ceased to be linear. Alara saw the birth of the stray dog in a shipyard on Mars, its plates gleaming and new. She saw its final moments, a cold, dead hulk drifting in an unknown nebula a century from now. She saw Eris Thorn, young and vibrant, handing her first star charting kit. She saw the despairing face of her Echo, mouthing the word run. It was a flood of moments, past and future, real and potential, all happening at once. It was a psychic scream that threatened to tear her sanity apart. Ella, Kane's voice cut through the chaos, a single table point in the storm. You must maintain focus. Your biological consciousness is the anchor. Do not let go. She clenched her teeth, focusing on the here and now, on the feel of the controls in her hands, the hum of the ship around her. She was Alara Vance, salvager, pilot, orphan. She was real. This was real. And then, as suddenly as it began, it was over. They punched through the other side of the anomaly. The screaming of the engines died down. The chaos of the veil was gone, replaced by an unnerving, perfect calm. They had arrived. They were floating in a bubble of placid space, a perfect sphere of tranquility carved out of the surrounding cosmic maelstrom. At the center of this bubble was Tantalus Base. It was not the derelict, abandoned station she had imagined. It was a sprawling, intricate structure, glowing with a soft, steady internal light. Its design was a fusion of standard human engineering and something else, something alien and elegant. The station's core was wrapped in a lattice of the same crystalline black material as the dark ship, the same material as the obelisk from the Daedalus. This lattice seemed to be the source of the calm, a soundproof wall against the madness of the veil. The Reaper was outside the bubble, its writhing tendrils batting uselessly against the invisible barrier, unable to penetrate the serene space within. It lingered for a moment. A predator denied its prey, before retreating back into the swirling chaos, vanishing from sight. Shields are holding at 100%, Kane reported, his voice betraying a hint of digital awe. The station is projecting a stable, localized reality field. Is a remarkable feat of engineering, far beyond known human or Gorgon capabilities. They had made it. They were safe, but the silence from the station was unnerving.
Are you picking up any signals?
Ilara asked, her voice hoarse. "1," Kane replied. "A low-power, wide-band transmission. It appears to be an automated docking guide. It is welcoming us." A proximity light on her console blinked from red to green. The station's main docking bay doors were cycling open, a silent invitation into the heart of the mystery. As the stray dog drifted slowly toward the glowing aperture, a voice crackled over the comms, clear and unfiltered by static. A voice that was both achingly familiar and chillingly strange. "Welcome, Ilara," it said. It was the calm, measured voice of Dr. Eris Thorne. "I must admit, I wasn't sure you would make it. Please, come inside. We have a great deal to discuss." The docking process was unnervingly smooth. The stray dog was guided into the cavernous hangar bay by invisible tractor beams, settling onto the pristine deck with a gentle sigh of hydraulics that seemed almost apologetic. Ilara's ship, a vessel of scars and makeshift repairs, looked like a vagrant that had wandered into a cathedral. The bay was vast, silent, and illuminated by a soft, indirect light that emanated from the very walls, casting no shadows. There was no ground crew, no welcoming committee, just the profound, humming silence of a place operating on principles she couldn't begin to understand. "External atmosphere is a perfect nitrogen-oxygen mix," Kane reported, his voice a low murmur in the cockpit. "No airborne pathogens or contaminants detected. It is safer than the recycled air on most core world stations." That, somehow, made it even more terrifying. "Stay connected to my comms," Ilara ordered, unbuckling herself. "Full sensor sweep of the station's network. I want to know what's running this place. And if his voice signature deviates even a fraction of a percent from the archival recordings we have of Dr. Thorne, you lock down the ship and get us the hell out of here. Understood." "Understood. Ayla, I will be your ghost." She slung her pulse rifle over her shoulder, the weight of familiar comfort, and cycled the ramp. The air that greeted her was cool and clean, with a faint, almost imperceptible scent of petrichor, the smell of rain on dry earth, an impossible, organic scent for a station sealed in the heart of a cosmic storm. At the far end of the hangar, a single figure stood waiting. He was older, of course. 10 years in this place had silvered his hair and etched fine lines around his eyes, but it was unmistakably him, Dr. Eris Thorne. He wore a simple dark gray tunic. His posture was relaxed, his hands clasped behind his back. The warm, inquisitive smile she remembered was still there, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. His eyes held a stillness, a depth that was not of this universe, as if he had spent a decade staring into the sun and had learned to see in a different spectrum of light. "You haven't aged a day, Ilara," he said, his voice the same gentle academic tone that had once guided her through the complexities of astrophysics. "Though I see you've traded in your textbooks for something a little more percussive." Ilara stopped 10 meters from him, her hand resting near the grip of her rifle. "You're a hard man to find, Aris." His smile tightened slightly. "And a difficult man to kill. Apparently, Axiom has been sending their little probes and ghost ships into the Veil for years, sniffing at the edges of my work. They are persistent, but they lack the imagination to truly comprehend what is here. You, however, always had imagination." He gestured down a long, gracefully curved corridor that seemed to be carved from the same seamless, light-emitting material as the hangar. Walk with me. There is much to show you, and I suspect you have questions. She followed, her mag boots clicking softly on the glowing floor, her senses on high alert. The station was a paradox of sterile emptiness and profound life. There were no crew, yet the air was fresh. There were no visible systems, yet the station hummed with immense, controlled power. How? She asked, the single word encompassing 1,000 questions. How are you alive? What is this place? Eris led her to an observation deck, a vast chamber whose transparent wall looked out not into the chaotic swirl of the veil, but into a perfect star-dusted night sky showing a familiar spiral arm of the Milky Way. It was a projection, a window onto a reality that was light years away. Tantalus Base was never just a research station. Alara, he began, his gaze fixed on the phantom stars. It was a cage. Axiom discovered the first obelisk, the locus, as we called it in the Gorgon system a century ago. They learned it was an anchor, a piece of a higher dimensional reality that could stabilize space-time. They thought they could turn it into a weapon, a shield. They were fools. The locus doesn't just stabilize reality, it attracts its opposite. He turned to face her, his still eyes boring into hers. The veil is not a natural phenomenon. It is a consequence, a reaction. Where the locus creates order, the universe compensates with chaos. The Reaper you encountered is a part of that compensation, a scavenger of broken possibilities. It's drawn to the echoes, the ghosts created by the instability. The echoes, Ilara breathed, remembering the captain of the Oracle, the other versions of ourselves. Precisely, Eris affirmed. Every choice you make, every path you don't take, creates a quantum echo, a faint, probabilistic ghost. In normal space, they decay instantly. But here, in the veil, the fabric of reality is so thin that they persist. They are the source of the madness. The crew of the Oracle wasn't haunted by ghosts. They were haunted by the crushing weight of their own infinite regrets. He led her to the center of the room, where a holographic projector shimmered to life at his approach. An image formed in the air, a sprawling, three-dimensional tree of light, its branches splitting and multiplying into a near-infinite fractal pattern. This, Eris said, his voice filled with a quiet reverence, is the truth of existence. Every branch is a timeline, every fork a choice. We live our lives on a single, fragile twig, unaware of the forest around us. His fingers danced through the holographic light, isolating one glowing branch. The image of a young woman appeared. It was Alara, but she was different. She wore the crisp uniform of an Axiom xenophysicist. She was laughing, standing beside an older, prouder-looking Eris Thorn in front of a gleaming starship. This is the Alara who accepted my offer to join the Tantalus Project, he said softly. The one who never became a salvager. She's a brilliant scientist. She has a family. She is happy. Alara stared at the image, a sharp, bitter pang of longing striking her so hard it took her breath away. The face of her echo from the Oracle, the one filled with despair, flashed in her mind. This was its opposite. This was the ghost of a life she'd never known, a life without the pain, the loneliness, the endless running. "Why are you showing me this?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Because I am not the monster Axiom believes I am," Eris said, his tone earnest. "They wanted to control this, to weaponize it. I saw its true potential. This place isn't a cage anymore, Alara. It's a sanctuary, A library of what-ifs. Using the locus. I haven't just shielded this station. I've learned to navigate the forest. To observe. To understand. A cold, creeping suspicion began to snake its way through her wonder. Kane, she subvocalized, her lips barely moving. What are you getting? His voice signature is a perfect match. Ella, the AI's voice whispered in her ear. Too perfect. There are none of the subtle variations in pitch and cadence that develop in a human voice over a decade. It is a recording, or a perfect reconstruction. Furthermore, the station is drawing a colossal amount of power, far more than necessary to maintain a reality field. The energy is being routed to a central processing core that does not appear on any known schematic. Its quantum signature, it resembles that of a sentient mind, but magnified a billionfold. Alara looked from the glowing hologram of her happier self back to the man she had once called her mentor. His smile was serene, but behind it, she now saw the cold, detached patience of a god, not a man. You're not just observing, are you? Eris, she said, her voice hardening. You called me here for a reason. What is it? The smile finally faded from his lips, replaced by a look of weary disappointment. Your cynicism was always your greatest flaw. Alara, I had hoped the years would temper it. Very well. Observation is merely the first step. The second is curation. He gestured, and the holographic tree shifted. He zoomed in on a cluster of branches, highlighting them in a sickly red light. These are failed timelines, he explained, his voice losing its warmth, becoming cold and clinical. Timelines that lead to war, to famine, to extinction, aberrations, errors in the equation. They are branches that bear only bitter fruit and must be pruned. The red branches flickered and died, erased from the cosmic tree. A wave of nausea washed over Ilara. He wasn't just watching. He was editing, deleting entire realities filled with billions of souls he had judged unworthy. You're playing God, she whispered, horrified. I am a gardener, he corrected her, his eyes flashing with a sudden, zealous fire. Tidying a garden that has been allowed to run wild for too long. But the locus requires an immense amount of concentration to wield. My own consciousness, my humanity, has diluted over the years. I am becoming more like the station, more like the forest, and less like the man who walks within it. I am losing my anchor. He looked at her, and for the first time, she saw the truth of his plan in his unnervingly still gaze. I brought you here to be my successor, Alara, to take my place at the heart of the locus, to help me prune the branches. Your mind, your resilience, your connection to me, you are the perfect candidate. I am offering you the chance to do more than just scavenge the scraps of the past. I am offering you the power to shape the future, all of them. The walls of the station seemed to press in, the soft light feeling suddenly predatory. This was his endgame. He hadn't invited her for a reunion. He had summoned her for an ascension. He was offering her a throne at the end of the universe, a throne from which she could erase any life, any history that didn't meet her approval. And if I refuse, she asked, her hand tightening on a rifle. Eris Thorne's expression became one of profound, cosmic sadness. Then you are simply another failed timeline, my dear Ilara, he said, and the corridor she had entered from sealed shut with a silent, final hum. A beautiful, but ultimately flawed, branch that must be pruned. The serene light of the observation deck hardened into a sterile, surgical glare. The very walls seemed to constrict, the air growing thin and cold. Eris Thorne did not move, but his will descended upon the station like a shroud. The beautiful projected star field outside the viewport dissolved into a cascade of frantic, corrupt data, then winked out, replaced by the swirling, mad chaos of the Persephone Veil. The soundproof room was gone. The storm was now pressing against the glass. "A regrettable decision, Elara," Eris's voice echoed, no longer coming from his physical form but from the station itself. A disembodied, omnipresent sound, but a predictable one. The flaw was always in your code. The holographic tree of timelines reappeared in the center of the room, and with a gesture from Eris, the single glowing branch that represented Elara Vance began to flicker, its light dimming as if starved of life. The floor beneath Elara's feet dissolved into a shimmering, uncertain mist. It wasn't an illusion. Her boots were losing purchase on reality itself. "Kane, what's happening?" she gritted out, her rifle feeling impossibly heavy. "He is deprioritizing your timeline within the Locus's computational matrix." The AI's voice came back, strained with digital effort. "He is not killing you. He is editing you out of the narrative. Your causal chain is being severed. Fight him." A direct assault on the station's core consciousness is inadvisable, Kane stated. "Its processing power is orders of magnitude beyond my own. However, I have identified a flaw in his architecture. He has integrated himself so completely with the Locus that he has become its central operating system. He is the god, but he is also the machine, and machines can be hacked." A schematic of the station flared to life in Elara's HUD. A single point glowed with intense, pulsating light, the Locus chamber. "While he is focused on erasing you, his primary processing power is occupied," Kane continued, his voice now a rapid-fire stream of data. "I am going to execute a distributed denial of service attack on a scale he will not anticipate. It will not disable him, but it will force him to divert resources, and it will be your window. You must get to the Locus chamber. Is the only way to sever his connection to the power source. And do what shoot the billion-year-old magic rock," Elara snapped, stumbling as the deck solidified for a moment, only to ripple like water. "That would be ineffective," Kane replied coolly. "You are the anchor, Ella. He brought you here because of your connection to his past, to his humanity. You are the one variable his logical system cannot perfectly quantify. You must be the one to introduce the paradox." The corridor behind Eris's unmoving form irised open. It was a challenge. "Go," Kane's voice urged. Elara didn't hesitate. She broke into a sprint, leaving the statue-like figure of Eris behind. The station immediately fought back. Hallways twisted, stretching into impossible lengths or collapsing into dead ends. Doors slammed shut, only to have Elara blast the locking mechanisms with her pulse rifle. This was no longer a sanctuary. It was a hostile, living labyrinth. And she was the virus it was trying to purge. As she rounded a corner, a figure blocked her path. It was a woman in a crisp Axiom uniform, her face a mask of cold disappointment. It was the other Elara, the brilliant scientist from the hologram, the ghost of the life she could have had. "You're throwing it all away," the Echo said, her voice a perfect imitation of Elara's own, but laced with a chilling condescension. "We could have saved trillions. We could have perfected the universe. All you offer is chaos." Elara raised her rifle, but paused. This wasn't real. It was a subroutine, a psychic defense mechanism. "You're not me," Elara growled and pushed past her. The Echo dissolved into light as she passed through it. Deeper in, the station threw another ghost at her, the despairing, hollowed-eyed woman from the Oracle, huddled on the floor, weeping. "He's right," the broken Echo sobbed. It's better to be erased than to live with the pain of what we've done, what we've lost. For a moment, Alara felt a pang of sympathy, so sharp it almost brought her to her knees. This was the raw, undiluted pain she had carried for a decade. She knelt, but instead of offering comfort, she simply looked her echo in the eyes. "Our pain doesn't define us," she said, her voice surprisingly gentle. "It's just a part of the story, and our story isn't over yet." She stood and continued on, leaving the weeping ghost to fade behind her. Finally, she saw a pair of massive, circular doors humming with contained power. The locust chamber. "Kane, now!" she yelled. "Executing!" the AI replied. All at once, the station shuddered violently. The lights flickered, and the constant, oppressive hum of Eris's consciousness stuttered. On Alara's HUD, she saw Kane's viral code pour into the station's network, not just random data, but a structured, targeted payload. The doors to the chamber slid open. The room was a sphere of pure, silent energy. In the center, suspended in a web of shimmering containment fields, was the obelisk, the locus. It drank the light and the sound, a perfect singularity of purpose. Floating before it was the ghost of Eris Thorn, no longer a physical man, but a translucent, shimmering being of pure thought, his form intertwined with the energy flowing from the obelisk. A clever little virus. Alara, his voice boomed, resonating from the very heart of the locus. But a tantrum in a tempest. You cannot comprehend what you are fighting. Let me show you. The chamber dissolved. She was standing in a field under a warm, yellow sun. The happy scientist Alara was there, holding the hand of a small child. The older, prouder Eris watched them, his face filled with genuine love. This was the perfect timeline, the one he had curated, a universe without loss, without pain, without the choices that led to heartbreak. It was a beautiful, gilded cage. "This can all be yours," Eris's voice whispered. "No more running, no more ghosts, only peace." Alara looked at the perfect, impossible scene, and for the first time in a decade, she laughed. It was a raw, bitter sound.
"It's not real. Eris,"
she said, turning back to his shimmering form. "Peace isn't the absence of pain. It's the acceptance of it. You taught me that curiosity was the engine, but empathy was the rudder. When did you lose your rudder? Empathy is a flaw in the system," he roared, the perfect world shattering around them. "A variable that leads to inefficient, emotional decisions. I have evolved beyond it." "No," Alara said, raising her rifle. "You just forgot what it felt like." At that moment, Kane's payload reached the core. It wasn't just a data bomb, it was a mirror. He had spent the entire journey compiling every trace, every mention, every possible echo of Eris Thorn himself, the brilliant teacher, the grieving husband who had lost his family before the Tantalus project, the terrified scientist in the last audio log, the man who had made 1,000 other choices. He uploaded every ghost of Eris Thorn directly into the God Mind. Eris screamed. It was a sound of pure psychic agony as a billion forgotten regrets, a billion paths not taken, a billion moments of pain, love, and doubt flooded his detached consciousness. The detached gardener was suddenly buried by the forest. His serene control shattered into a million pieces of raw, human emotion. The station began to tear itself apart. The reality bubble outside flickered and died, and the full chaos of the veil slammed into the breaking station. "Alara, we must leave now," Kane urged. Alara turned and ran for The station was dying around her, walls collapsing into temporal fissures, floors vanishing into nothingness. She sprinted back the way she came, the path now clear. The station's intelligence too consumed by its own self-destruction to stop her. She burst into the hangar bay and scrambled up the ramp of the stray dog as the deck plates behind her buckled and tore away into the void. "Get us out of here!" she screamed, firing up the engines. The stray dog shot out of the collapsing station just as Tantalus Base, the Locus, and the fractured mind of Eris Thorn imploded, pulling the surrounding chaos of the Persephone Veil in with it. The wound in the universe sealed itself shut in a final, silent flash of impossible light, leaving behind only calm, empty space and the faint, lingering scent of ozone and cinnamon. Adrift in the sudden silence, the stray dog was a battered but victorious survivor. The Axiom ship, which had been lurking at the edge of the veil, registered the cataclysmic event and, without a word, turned and fled back toward civilized space, its mission a catastrophic failure. They were alone. "Is he gone?" Ilara asked, her voice quiet. "His consciousness signature has been completely erased from this timeline," Kane confirmed. "Along with the anomaly known as the Persephone Veil, the echo has been silenced." Ilara leaned back in her chair, the exhaustion of a lifetime settling over her. She looked at the star chart on her screen, at the blinking cursor that marked her current, unknown position. For the first time, she had no ghosts behind her and no predator in front of her. The branch of her timeline was her own again. "So, where to now?" "Ella," Kane asked, his synthesized voice holding a new, softer quality. Ilara looked at the infinite sea of stars before her, at the endless forest of choices. She thought of the graveyard as her other selves, of the man who had tried to prune the universe into a perfect, sterile garden. She smiled, a real smile, tired but genuine. "I don't know," she said, and for the first time in her life, the words felt not like a curse, but like a promise. "Plot a course for somewhere new